Hey everybody, we're almost done, with day one at E3 at the PlayStation booth. And I've got a couple very special guests here with me right now. That would be Cory Barlog. You are the creative director for God of War.
Yes.
Very exciting. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Christopher Judge, who are you? Who are you?
I am fortunate enough to be playing Kratos.
Oh man, that's awesome. Excellent. Excellent. So you're playing Kratos. I want to talk a little bit more about that. But first, I want to talk a little bit about that magical moment last night when the orchestra was going and those curtains raised and we saw really what became God of War. What was going through your head as you saw all of this?
Don't screw up, don't screw up, don't screw up. No, actually, I was super relaxed about the playthrough, and when I kind of got a full view of the audience and we started playing and everything started clicking in, it was the greatest feeling ever. I mean, it was when Kratos first came on screen and people stood up and cheered, like that kind of threw me. I knew we kind of left room for applause, like maybe people will clap here. Oh, he broke his mic. Seriously, you cannot trust this guy with any technology. Do you want to take that off? He's shedding the mic, right? Like, he's so tough, he breaks mics with his 2 fingers. But yeah, I was so floored by that response. It was amazing. We've worked so hard for so long. So it's great to hear that.
You're no stranger to the God of War franchise, actually.
That's very true.
So you worked on the original one. I want to say you were art director.
Animation director.
Animation director. I was close.
That was close. It had an A in it, so you were there.
Then you were game director on God of War 2, which is one of my personal favorites out of the series.
Thank you.
You spent your time in the wilderness for a while. Now you're back. And this is a bold new vision. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Tell me a little bit. Let's get inside your head a little bit about this new approach. I mean, you can even just see here, gorgeous looking game, but very, very distinct visually from what we know of as God of War.
Yeah, I think right from the beginning, we wanted to rip this whole thing up and rebuild it from scratch. Find all the things that worked. Really the things that were like, this is great, we love this must stay. But all the things that felt like they were not steering towards this core vision of a closer, more intimate look at Kratos' life. Like, this character, the first chapter of his life really is this kind of birth of the anti-hero inside the era of Greek games. Like 7 games, this amazing sort of introduction to this character. And just like long format television, where a character can go from one side to the polar opposite, they can be hated and loathed and then sympathized with throughout this entire sort of arc, we're doing something similar. I love the challenge of taking something like that on and making people think.
So tell me a little bit about the universe we're seeing here. I mean, can you get into any of that? I mean, this is radically different. This is definitely not, again, the sort of Greek mythology that we all know and love. It doesn't appear to be, at least. This is something really fresh and different.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how you landed on this look and how you landed on the setting.
The setting, we kind of had kicked around a bunch of mythologies for quite a while. We ended up in a period that is not the Viking era. It's sort of, before the Viking era is the migration, and then before the migration, this sort of pre-migration era is the era we're sort of positing that the Vikings always talk about when they say the gods have abandoned us. They used to walk the earth. Odin and Loki and Thor all walked amongst with beasts and monsters. So this period of time in Scandinavia that we're at is actually this time when the gods walk the earth. And kind of the visual direction, like we've worked a long time kind of finding this idea of isolating Kratos and his son so that they're in a world where nobody is friendly. They are not going to be high-fiving a bunch of people throughout this world. This is a world where everything is hostile, where the son is actually the only one who understands the language. So the player, playing as Kratos, experiences that kind of stranger in a strange land where their kid actually has a lot of the power. They don't understand the language. The troll is speaking in ancient Norse. So the kid would actually understand what he's saying. Kratos and the player, we don't understand. So we kind of have this interesting sort of inroad to that, which I think allows us to really focus on a new dynamic with Kratos and his son.
That's awesome, and I want to talk a little bit more about that. But Christopher, I want to talk to you a little bit too, because you're now playing Kratos. This is a very iconic role for gamers, obviously. This is a little bit of a different Kratos too than we've seen in the past. So how are you approaching the character? I mean, what are his motivations? How do you see him?
Well, you know,
when I first started researching Kratos, he obviously is a very visceral, very physical guy. And looking at it as an actor, I hate to use the term one-dimensional, but from an emotional standpoint, it was. So when I looked at this script, and I think one of the first days that we met, one of the first things I said was, like, this is like a script. It's not a game script.
Right.
It's a script. It's a fleshed out story with fleshed out characters that run the gamut of full emotional ranges. And what really touched me was Kratos and his struggle to accept a new role, to not be the same old Kratos. And so just from that aspect, there's just so many places to go emotionally and acting wise. I mean, it truly is like the role of a lifetime.
That's awesome. I mean, but this is still Kratos, right? This is still Kratos.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a new Kratos. This is the Kratos we know, right?
Yeah.
But at a different time in his life, it seems like.
Right.
Yeah, he's older. He's
Yeah.
kind of in that first chapter. It's kind of that birth of the anti-hero, but this is Kratos as he's sort of looking through life through a different lens, you know? And it, for me, it reflects, I think, a lot of creative people when they make something. A lot of what they make is part of their own life, what they're seeing reflected back to them in their own life. And for me, I'm kind of at a different phase in my life. And that motivated this, like, well, that's an interesting thing. I look at the world differently now than I did when I started on God of War. Like, my view of the world, how I perceive characters and stories is totally different. And how interesting would that be if Kratos walked along that parallel path?
I love that you mentioned that because I remember I was working in the games press when God of War first came out, and a big part of the charm was how, how Christopher put it, one or two dimensional Kratos was. That was actually very charming at the time. I mean, it was
rage.
Yeah, it was just rage, and you knew exactly where he stood, and he was
Right.
very predictable, and he was unpredictable in a predictable way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I love this relationship with the son, and we're going to see a little bit more. In case you missed any of the footage from last night's press conference, we're kind of recapping that here. It's a little bit. He seems almost a little frustrated with his son in some instances, but he's trying to be patient. You could, at least from my perspective, seems like he's really trying to challenge himself to be a little bit of a different guy.
Yep.
I just think that's fascinating.
He struggles. I mean, it's the human part of the whole experience. Like, no matter how fantastic the story is the setting that you're in, these sort of real human challenges of, like, another person, a tiny human, not listening to the words that you're saying and not understanding what you think is very simple, and that frustration of, like, I can't let the anger out. I have to convey this information, and it's also, I think the Kratos challenge is that how much of himself, his real self, is he going to show his kid?
Right. Yep.
And how much of his real self does he see in his kid, and how much does that just crush him?
Yeah.
To see that.
Well, there's two universals that I absolutely love. That I think for things to be successful and relatable, they have to have commonality. They have to have themology that people can relate to. One is what changes more than having a child? More than a child, nothing. And the second, which, I mean, how do you father when you've never been fathered?
Right.
And trying to find that.
That's really good.
That's great.
Did you just come up with that now?
I've actually been thinking about it.
God,
Yeah?
we're going to pay you.
Well, that is the cherry on top.
That is really good. How do you father when you've never been fathered, man? I mean, I just came up with that.
Now, I love this scene in particular. I think this is the one. There was, some great combat, some great action in the scene in this entire demo, but this little sequence right here gives me chills, even watching it again. Let's just take a second and acknowledge it. I mean, that's just awesome. That's just so awesome.
It's I think a lot of this whole experience started at that moment.
Yeah.
That concept of the missed moment, the bad timing, that idea of kids ready to open up, Kratos looking ahead, doesn't want to deal with the problem. He's in a moment of like his own after something like that.
That's right.
And then Kratos is ready to open up, and it's kind of that I don't have the strength to pat you on the back, but I feel 100% comfortable and have the strength to take a giant troll down.
Yeah.
That's my wheelhouse, but emotions and any kind of vulnerability, any kind of compliment, when, as he so beautifully put, he's never been fathered. He grew up in the Spartan, which is the most brutal military training any human being could ever undergo, right? It does not breed soft, cuddly puppies.
Not at all.
And for him to come out the other side of that one and have the will to do this it's awesome. It's an interesting drama.
It's fascinating, and I love that there's this sort of interpersonal dynamic, this relationship at the heart of the game, clearly. That excites me a lot. I mean, we're seeing some great narrative these days. We had the Telltale guys over here earlier. I love what David Cage is after with Detroit Become Human.
Yes.
There is some really interesting storytelling happening in games right now. God of War is a big part of that conversation. That's exciting.
That's pretty awesome.
It is awesome.
To be included in that, that's great. I'm very happy that the audience wants to consume these kinds of stories. I mean, that is showing an incredible shift in the industry and an exciting time to play games.
I mean, what more could you ask for? Now,
more money.
Yeah, more money.
I'll take more money.
I'll take some of that too. If you would indulge me, I have a couple of nerdy game questions to ask you.
Fantastic.
So, RPG upgrades, that kind of stuff. Are we going to see kind of character progression for Kratos here?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah?
Yes, absolutely. How it manifests, we're still in the development phase of all that stuff, but in that sort of methodology of we're going to rip it up and rebuild it, the concept of upgrading Kratos and even the sun, is taking on a whole new sort of image for this game.
Awesome. Good to hear. And of course, we haven't seen the Blades of Chaos. We do see an axe. And I'm curious about this axe. This axe feels like it's kind of maybe central to the game in some way. So I'm curious about that thing.
It has a history.
Yeah?
There's a whole story that connects to a lot of the characters around this axe. I know you don't want to hear this, but I can't really talk too much about that part.
I can accept it.
But it was very deliberate going with a new weapon because we're going with a whole new way of controlling the game. We are shifting everything to a whole new set of buttons and a whole new way of interacting with the controller. And I think if we had something too familiar, you would start going to the old standby, square, square, triangle, and why doesn't that work?
Yep.
And I think it's a little bit easier to introduce people to something like that. But yeah, we had a long development cycle on that thing, and it went through a lot of revisions. But where it's at right now is awesome, and it's thanks to an incredible team who have not stopped working for years trying to get this thing going. So, Santa Monica Studios.
That's exciting to hear. And I can only imagine, does the sun have a name, by the way?
GameSpot says it's Charlie.
Charlie?
I don't know where that came from.
That's fun.
Charlie, right? Did you leak that?
I did.
I mean, you had a good phrase here, but leaking Charlie?
I know.
Come on, dude.
I actually said
that was
Charles,
supposed to be a
but
secret. It's
yeah.
very Norse, Charlie. It's old, ancient Norse, Charlie. That's not a thing we're talking about either. But we'll go with codename Charlie for now. There are going to be so many Charlie trophies in this game, it is ridiculous.
I feel bad calling him the Sun constantly. At some point, I feel like I want to have a name for him. But is he going to be factoring into gameplay at all? Is he going to be like helping Kratos while he fights? I mean, we saw a little bit of that there, but
the kind of interesting sort of narrative skeleton we have around this is the idea of teaching, of passing knowledge on from parent to child, from father to son. And in that time period when survival was literally a step at a time, this kind of information is what allowed you to take that next step. So it is incredibly important. And throughout the entire game, Kratos is constantly teaching the child in banter and actual interactivity. But we've dedicated like an entire button to the kid, you know, sort of leaning into the camera a little bit and pairing that with a button so that wherever you look, press the sun button. If it's at an enemy and you want to attack them, that one button's going to let you attack them.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's going to let you start a puzzle and interact with a door or something like that. Sun goes over there, you know. Very simple, very accessible, but in a pinch, in sort of under duress, you can do it very quickly because it's just instinctive. Kind of feeds into that instinctual loop for the player.
That'd be really handy in real life. It was just occurred to me as well.
I know, right? There was a lot of talk at the beginning of like you'd hit the button, but he would be like, I don't want to do that. we'll do that in the teenage years, where you just keep hitting the button and they're like, whatever, dude, I'm not doing that.
What more is there to say? Actually, quite a lot, but we are out of time. Cory,
Oh.
Christopher, real pleasure to have you by the show. I have a feeling we're going to be hearing a lot more about God of War.
Oh, very good, very good. Thank you.
And congratulations.
Thank
Hell of a
you.
show.
Thank you. Thank you
All
very
right.
much. Congratulations.